The thing is that women have a tendency of understanding. That's why the affairs is eventually come in when a guy is married and starts struggling in their marriage and they're not listening to him. They easily seek consolation elsewhere from a mutual friend who eventually over-listens, and they end up actually starting a relationship that way. I don't condone that. I don't believe in that. But the beginning point of men feeling low is when no one really understands you. Welcome to another edition of Manhunt, and today's podcast is actually going to be a little bit different. One of our guys is not here. Charles is not here. Yeah. But I'll start it by finding out a little bit how have you been? Jesh Tambula, what's going? What's cooking?
Uganda ntwala. Simanyi wange name MK movements. But yeah, the economy is biting, and we are deciding that we must match with it.
I hear you.
We must. There is no option. I don't know what's happening over here, but
latest news on the block is Chabazinga.
Chabazinga is my OP.
I hear you.
He's my classmate.
Yeah. So the guy.
Don't ask me if I have his number.
But well, I think what has blown me so much into lately is again women audios that are making it on the internet. You know, the last one I watched was again another woman claiming to be a girlfriend and is from the northern part of Uganda and is saying
girlfriend of the Chabazinga.
Yes, and she was wishing him happy coronation. So I mean, it's just been a lot of nonsense. You get my point, eh?
I need to go catch up.
This is a king, man.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But anyway, away from that, the focus. I know one guy is not actually here, but today the focus of this podcast, the focus of this broadcast is going to be more of a reactionary video to a small clip that you earlier shared in the group. And the key thing that we want to address is where do men go? Where do men go in times of pressure, in times of trouble, where does a man go when they do not have money? You know? But before that, I want you to play that video and we listen to it and we can carry on the conversation.
All right.
Yeah, man. God said I should talk to you. God said I should tell you that he didn't call you to be strong. He called you to be his son. God said I should tell you that the society cannot name you, that he has given you his name. His son. Dear man, I understand that you've been taught for a long time that you have to be strong, that even if you're breaking inside, put up a wall, let the mask be defined as you. I understand that money has been your recognition for a long time and your influence has been justified by the material things that you can afford. Dear man, I understand that ever since you were young, you were told not to feel, not to cry, not to care, but to give and to give and to keep giving. Dear man, I see your hidden tears. Dear man, the last time you were allowed to be a boy was before your younger sister was born. I see that.
Okay.
Dear man, I understand that some of you are even called, but you are broken inside. Preaching, but crying inside. Ministering, but dead inside. You want to feel, you really want to feel. The last person you his bride too. He loves you. Dear man, when last did you cry? When last did you talk to God exactly about where it hurts? When last did you share your pain, dear man? Dear man. God said I should tell you, he didn't call you to be strong. He called you to be his son. He didn't call you to be strong. He called you to allow him to be strong through you. I've been taught to depend on yourself and to be the person that everybody depends on, but you have refused to depend on him because you don't know how to. Dear man, he wants you to depend on him. He wants you to depend on him. Society can't name you. Which society are you expecting to call you strong? What society are you expecting to applaud your vulnerability? What society? Society that has no problem with people who steal from them in great amounts but will stone someone that stole 10 naira? Is it the same society that you're expecting to laud you? The society that is calling those things that are wrong right and shaming those right things and calling them wrong. Are those the people that you're expecting to clap for you? Is it those same people? Yeah, man. Why are you so worried about what people think about you? Why do you care? You know what's funny? You guys care and then pretend like you don't care. To those of us who know that you care, you really want to cry. You really want to be held. You really want to be told that you are loved. But you are giving us the mask that you don't care. We know that you do. And I'm here to tell you that it is okay. That you can feel bad. That you can feel sorry. That you can feel vulnerable. That you can feel unsafe sometimes. It's okay. It's okay. I want to transfer you to the person who can handle this thing and make you better every time. His name is Jesus. Jesus didn't only die for women's emotions, he died for yours too. Why do you feel like he doesn't care? Why do you feel like even he called you to be strong? God, the same God that said the name of Jesus is a strong tower and that the righteous run into it and they are safe. He knows that if you are not in the name of Jesus, you are not safe. You can't hide in your manhood. It is weak. An arm of flesh will fail you, including your own. Come to Christ, man. Come and lay expectations of the society at his feet. Come and lay the expectation of being a man at his feet. Come and lay the vulnerability of your past at his feet. Come and lay your fears at his feet. Come, dear man. Come and let him be yours. Your guide, your help, your teacher, your man, your G. Ride and live, dear man. God said I should tell you that he didn't call you to be strong. He called you to be his man.
I feel like asking a question. What emotions does this clip stir in you, dear man?
Of course, I am. I feel it. I don't know whether I'm going to feel offended or, but hashtag hard guys. I don't know whether you've seen that hashtag around.
Hard
Hard
guys.
They storm. They enter the city. They work. They don't eat lunch. They don't eat anything. They walk back home. They. But I think the emotion listening to this madam, well, she the fact is that she has a deep point, you know. She makes a point. Well, I like a good portion of it. The rest of the things where I felt like she's over talking about the same thing. It's more of a poem, but I'll ignore that and focus on the entire message she's trying to put up. You know, interestingly, she's a female who is a bit concerned about the things that men hide. And when she says that,
Wait, before you discuss what she says, what does it make you feel like?
well, it doesn't make me feel a thing. It just reminds me.
Okay.
It just reminds me where I've been before. You know, it reminds me of situations I've been in, and it's actually been me and God.
Okay.
You know, like situations that I had to figure out on my own, and yeah, it like took honestly, I feel nothing. I just, but of course, it makes me think about those, like the entire conversation just reminds me those moments, and truthfully, I feel she has a point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I understand what she's trying to say.
Mm.
I don't know why.
Mm.
I felt the person who sent me the script.
Mm.
My response to them was condescending.
Mm.
Felt condescended
Mm.
too. There was another word that I used. Basically, I surprised myself because whereas I understand what she's saying, something about how she framed it annoyed me. Because I don't know how to say it, but one of the best words for it is I felt condescended upon as a man. And that's why I wanted us to start with just how it makes you feel.
Exactly.
Because yes, the content is valid, first of all.
I can see
the content is valid.
You're technically attacked.
Yes. No, not attacked. Not attacked. I am tired of people.
Mm.
I think the best way to say it is, you remember how men are not allowed to discuss feminism or white people discuss racism?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for the first time I understood that maybe women are not supposed to discuss men. Like, that's one of the feelings that I had there. It's terrible that I have such a strong feeling. But I wanted to admit that I have that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that a fair part of responding to her, in being fair, because she seems to actually hurt for men. Like, when you, yes, it's poetry and you have to posture and get a voice, but her heart is in the right place. And I guess even the fact that it rubbed me wrong might be a good thing, you know. So that's for me to sit and deal with.
Yeah, I actually she said a simple thing in 3 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, she said a simple hard thing.
Yes.
In 3 minutes, and I feel like it wasn't necessary. The issue is, the fact is, what goes on in the life of a man, tends to stay in the life of a man and in the mind and the heart. You get my point. Yeah. But the few episodes when it has come out, it has come out bad, and these females know.
Yes.
So I feel like she has a point. she has just been.
Now
like,
this is why I'm saying that I feel like whereas I feel how I feel about what she has said. It's up to me to sit down and also think about what she has said and why it affects it, why I feel how I feel about it. Yes, I may be right, but I am probably also wrong.
I get it.
You know?
But let's build now the conversation a little bit further.
Let's talk about
now,
what
for
she
me,
talks about.
in regards to today's topic, where does a man go in times when he feels low? Where does a man go in times when there is no money? Where does a man go in times where things are not adding up?
Yeah.
You get? Probably the first question is going to be, what are those things that make men feel low? Before we actually get into where they go, but what are those triggers? What are those things that make a guy, a certain son of Adam, you know, with a channel or somewhere, with a big beard, with a, you know, with a good muscle, with nothing. Like, what are those things that make men really feel invalid, feel low? What are those things that frustrate men? What are those things that humble a man to a place of, nigga, you are a human, man. Things are not perfect. The world is not for the world does not belong to your jaja, like people say. What are those things that you know that make a man go a bit more low?
Interestingly, the first one that comes to my mind as you try and you'll of course come in with yours is most men even married and with friends, have no one to talk to about real stuff. Like, and I guess she talked about it, which is a very good, valid point that she put out. The guy is carrying something really heavy, but has no one to talk to. And I think there's a lot of men who are like that. So they just can't be frank with people about what.
So now that's the first thing that you're highlighting is not having a person to talk to.
Yeah, they have no intimacy.
Yeah.
They have no intimacy and intimacy, not passion. Intimacy, like, because self-revelation is intimacy. Talking about the real thing that's on your mind. No, not on your mind, but the thing that is eating you up. Because I guess what we usually do is get solving, but you can't solve everything. Some things don't even need to be solved. They need to be talked, I guess. That's one. Disability. Like, people have disabled men. And the worst thing that happens to a lot of men is that the key people in their lives, now I'm going to say this, and you're a married man and I'm not, so feel free to disable me at some point. But I feel like from some of the few, now, because of my background in psychology, I end up counseling married people every once in a while because they think I must counsel them. I'm the psychologist. And, well, I tend to be a good listener, and I'm told that I have good advice sometimes. It seems to work. So far, it seems to work. One of the things that I realize is that people who are in men's lives tend to disable these men. I'm going to explain what I mean by disable without knowing they're disabling them. Like, this guy shows up when you've started a relationship with them, and he tells you something that is extremely sensitive to them because they feel like, oh, I found my person. And then they tell you something and you drop a careless comment about it. The typical thing that men do is they listen to the response you've given them and they realize, oh, I can't talk to that person about this. And that's the end of that. It will never come back. It's done. At most, they'll talk to someone else. And I think that's one of the things that takes men to certain types of women, because there are women who they find outside of marriage who listen without judging. I think, and interestingly, I've had that conversation happen when side dishes are telling wives, why don't you learn to listen to your man? Because the side dish is addressing a key thing. The side dish knows it's not their job to solve his problems. Just listening to him. And I guess that puts him in a space where he's solving. So the disabling is you think that what he is talking about is not as important as it is. Or you think it's not addressed to you. Or he tells you something and you may know more than him about it, but you show him that really what he knows he doesn't know. He won't come back. He won't come back. I mean, there's a way to talk to him, because let me step on the landmine. We call it a patriarchal society. I don't care that right now men, it's not really a patriarchal society. If we're being honest, it has been it's so upside down. We don't know what it is, but it's bordering on a more feminist society right now. Anything feminist goes. It's right by default, I think. But and since we've labeled things patriarchal, so the man, whatever you think of him, shows up and he's thinking about himself like this. He knows what he must do in that house. He's owning that responsibility. And then you shoot him down. I'm not even going to try and describe what shooting down means, but because there's a million versions of you shot him down. And it doesn't always have to be feminism that shoots men down. It's just he's trying to contribute, and you're showing him that contribution doesn't, it doesn't cut it, either because you're comparing him to someone else, or you're asking for... It's okay to ask him for more than he can give. He'll usually try to meet up to it. I think that's what most men will do. They'll try to, find a way to do it. But every time you shoot him down and you take away that position, know in your mind, he has no other position to go to. So the one thing that you've done for him, you closed him out.
I get it. I think I love those. Maybe just to add on, when we talk about where exactly does a man go in when we talk about what are those things that make a man get frustrated or find that they are low, I think one of them, it's depending on what stage the man is
of life.
Yeah. If you're a man and probably you're not yet married, you're capable of also being a little bit more low, and one of those things is a failure to make sense out of life, especially if your definition of life is connected to how much you earn, because by nature, the only age bracket that is allowed to have access to money anytime they want is when we are kids. In fact, when you're a child and you go to your mom and you ask for money and there's no money, you actually get offended. You get, because we think that mom and dad, they technically have the money, but because we are kids. But as you grow up, you discover, the truth comes to you that my mom and my dad, they have a job, they work, so the money has to be budgeted. And there's a point you reach in life and you actually understand that my mom has, my dad has, does not have, or something, and you just understand the situation. But now as you transition into manhood, probably 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, in those moments, those are the formative years of a man. Sometimes depending on where you are, if you are within school, the school system actually gives you support. That's why when we talk about men feeling low, we rarely point to high schoolers, we rarely point to campusers, because at that age, when a man is in their formative years, they're going through school, they inevitably have community around them. If you remember the time at school, you might have this teacher who is hard on you and things are hard, but man, the moment you get back to the dormitory, you have a blast. There is that chimeza, that chibozi that happens in the night, and then you talk about this and that, over the weekend there is something happening. So at that particular point, you're still a man, but you're under formation, and by default, you just have a system around you. You actually don't know that actually men feel low. Trust me, when we talk about that men sometimes feel low in life, kids don't understand that.
Yeah.
But as you get into this, you get into now, enter university, enter tertiary institutions, start learning. And again there, you have some form of community that you didn't request for, but it's a default. You're in an environment, so you're going to make bad days or something. But now, when you transition now, after school, and you start now living people begin to reduce in your life. Now that's where your point comes in.
Yeah.
That you start getting now issues, questions. I've seen people frustrated because they can't be successful at creating a relationship with a girl. They're at that particular point, they need a girl to simply be their friend, but everything about them, I think when they look at themselves, they feel like, they don't have enough English, or they don't have enough looks. There is something that they feel, and that alone, because a man was wired to have relationships with women to find some form of comfort. in the female species, the inability to convince the other party. It's like a small thing,
Yeah.
but there is a certain level you've just dropped by the virtue of the fact that you just can't sustain a conversation with a girl. You get? So, again, at that particular level, if your issue is, you've seen guys who have funny statements that, man, me, I don't like girls, I prefer whatever. It is just, it's just a because it's just a consolation, because you just don't have the lines. And again, right now, I'm actually not talking about you pursuing a girlfriend. I'm just talking about being friends. There is something that God put in the other party that it didn't put in us.
Let me actually just, before you go much further, because I think that there's something really important there for guys, and maybe even for girls to realize. One of the reasons why even married men will still go to a side chick is because even when a guy will talk to other guys about stuff, you alluded to this thing in men that God created that is addressed by women. They are not doing anything, but I don't know if the correct word is sympathy or empathy, but someone to just listen to you, and I guess if it's the wrong statement, you correct it. Validate your experience. It's not remove it, it's not do anything about it, but just listen to you and validate your experience. I find that a lot of men who, like, if you talk to struggling, especially I've talked to struggling young men, high school or whatever, and they tell you, this person, I met this person and man, she understands me. She you know the person they're talking about, and you know that person doesn't have that level of intervention to solve his problems. But the guy is saying, I had a conversation with her. Like, I think one of the most special things that a guy can get from any girl, conversation.
Exactly. Now,
Crazy.
I want to loop a certain sense into this. That, like what I'm saying is, you are at a beginning point of getting low in your life when no one understands you. So again, clearly, one of the things that make men reach a point whereby they are low is that when no one understands them. I don't want to say when no female understands them, but when no one. The thing is that women have a tendency of understanding. That's why the affairs is eventually come in when a guy is married and starts struggling in their marriage and they're not listening to him. They easily seek consolation elsewhere from a mutual friend who eventually over-listens, and they end up actually starting a relationship that way. I don't condone that. I don't believe in that. But what the beginning point of men feeling low is when no one really understands you. Now, to make things worse is that the areas where you need to be understood is, when someone understands you, they figure out ways of helping you. Sometimes it is as simple as, man, I studied, I have a degree or something, but I don't have a job. You get my point? Can someone really understand me on this? Can someone try to connect me? Can someone try to help me? When no one is actually there, you begin to get low. Now, again, when you're successful and you make it into that, again, once you even get a job, you still want to be understood. If you're a kind of a guy and probably you're not groomed enough to take care of yourself, to invest a bit in yourself and dress well, I mean, your physical appearance alone, may make people look at you in a manner that is a bit sort of a disgrace. And that alone, again, kills your self-esteem down, puts you down. I mean, if you're not so good at your work and people comment about it, you still feel misunderstood. So what happens is that the issues that men are dealing with are pretty much, So me, from what you're saying and what I'm saying, I feel like one of the mutual places that one of the areas where one of the things that make men really go low is that when no one understands them, when no one listens to them, when no one validates them, when no one encourages them, when no one stands with them, you get. And that is the reality that we discover later when we grow. Because we grow up with community. All the way from nursery, community was around, you go to school, blah, 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 go to high school, go to secondary school, and all of a sudden you get into this organization, it's big, you get a job, and now community begins to die. Precious.
Doesn't community die for everyone?
Yeah. It die. Like community can mean to die because it actually it's meant to die, but you are meant to keep the community alive. That's why if no one tells you to be intentional, things are going to die. Go. We've seen even us were in church and you have a cell that you attend. Man, you get a good job and you kill cell. Sometimes cell is the cell meeting. That cell meeting with your 10 guys, or your 15 guys, those 15 guys, man, for me, they tend to even be better than the whole church. You go back and you unwind, you talk about stuff. When you get a baby, they're the first people to talk. When you're sad, when you're broke, there is a nigga you're going to call to give you some money and then to carry you through. When you're frustrated, there is always a guy. Now, what happens? You get this job, and then all of a sudden you concentrate on the job and you kick that community. So that's how community dies in a life of a man who may not actually. And by the time you realize it, it's late. I've received phone calls from people that I last heard from like 5 years ago, and the guy calls and is like, he's in need of some small money. And because I understand life, if I'm in position, I would help. But I ask myself, where was he all this while? You get it? Why? It only takes an understanding guy to respond to a brother after a long while who is in need of help. But if you kept your community, you would get the help. So me, I feel like you go low, especially when you can't make ends meet. You get automatically, once you're struggling to make ends meet, once you're struggling to make sense of your day-to-day life, you still get invalid.
I'm going to take you back a bit to the video that she mentions, and this might take us a bit away from the trajectory that we've taken. She says that, two things. I'm going to say them both so that we separate them. One is that God told her to tell men. I don't like that God told her. No, because it's obvious, right? it's okay when you. I want to explain why that rubs me wrong is because a totally terrible person can't hide behind God told me. I like when people say, God or not, this is a problem. Because when we hide behind God, it's dangerous. And then she says that men should not be strong. I understand what she's saying. But I want to ask, unfortunately, I'm going to ask you to be in my shoes and help me understand why I don't like that she's saying men should not be strong. Because everything in my experience says, boy, be strong. In fact, I like that the Bible seems to be on my side of that one. Like, be strong.
Yeah. Well, I am. In regards to that, the more we get into this conversation, the more I understand why you feel that way. Because she's again, why I say this, I want to, like, what I mean to say is that the more we get into the conversation, I understand why you think that women should actually not be advising us on these things. You get, you're probably right.
Don't mind advice
you don't
women,
mind. You're right, and okay, there is a grain of truth to it, and something that is not true because she's female. And she's talking about emotions. When you feel. One of the things that women and some people don't understand about men, that the default of a man is logic. Then the secondary thing to a man is the emotions and the feelings. But when I listen to this video, she has a greater point. So she wants you to feel like them, to speak your pain, to cry, to do what? That thing is, that is not in the DNA. You get it?
Yeah.
That is not in the DNA of a man. You get?
Let me just comment about that before you go away from it. That the truth is, men are not just trying to posture strength. The truth is, we feel I guess we are as emotional as women, if not more emotional.
Exactly.
The difference is something terrible has happened. Last time we talked about whether men should save women and children first. Our default answer was, it doesn't matter if there's feminism or not. Save the women and children and then come back and talk about whether we should be feminists or not. Period. Like, just because some things are just right to do. One of the things that, and the feminists can argue that that we have been socialized to have this particular belief that I'm about to say, that you should suck it up and get to work on it. But you see, as you grow up, and I'm glad that we are not too old, we have grown up hearing all these things about how gender roles and how they should be adjusted, and we've seen a lot of. I strongly believe that you don't behave how the older men behaved. Like, we a lot more respectful of women and stuff. Like, so we're not typically behaving from a point of view of disrespect towards women, or thinking that they are unable because, hey, we've sat in class with them, they were better than us in class, we work with them, we see their work. Like, it's different when you experience someone do something. You cannot say they are unable. But there's still a thing where at the end of the day, Moses, something happens. You will be emotional last. First you will deal with it. And the place of dealing with it has no, like, that's where the saying men are more logical than emotional. Because you stop and you realize, hey, we're at a burial. I was at a burial last weekend that had like a problem. And this guy did exactly what she's saying don't do. He was strong for all of us. Because if he dared to cry, we would all break down. I got into the church and I had tears in my eyes. I held them back because I saw him seated, looking good, at a burial with his head held high. Man, I found my strength.
Exactly.
I sat down.
Exactly. So,
You know, he held us together, and it felt unfair that he was the one holding us together. But we all know. And even when I was texting mutual friends, I was texting those that I especially know are very close to him and telling them, hey, when he comes back, don't keep an eye off him. Let him, because he's going to break down when he comes. And we know that when the heat has cooled down, we are going to go to a corner and then and it will happen. So people don't see that men actually go to a corner and cry it out. Of course, there are men who don't have that corner. That's a terrible, terrible thing. Because you need to not be strong like you need to let it out at some point. But the truth is, if you're asking men to be weak in society, it's not going to come.
Okay, I think the point she starts with is a very good point. Then the advice she's actually giving is not actually the exact type of advice that men need. The fact is that men are going through stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
Men are struggling with lots of questions in life. Men are struggling with the disease of comparing each to one another. So and so has a car, I do not have a car. I'm 38 years old, I have not built. I'm 38 years old, I'm not married. I'm this, what. So all these things, there is a way, all these are problems that men are dealing with. You get my point? So the question is that men need help, but that's not the type of help they need. Men are actually not in need of anyone to tell them it's okay. You cry, you do this. You no. It's like for women, it is normal. You know, I've seen women frustrated and they had nothing to do to each other. They held each other.
Let me ask a direct question. What kind of help do men actually need?
That's where I'm heading.
Yeah.
You get it? I've seen women who they cried together. They held each other longer and they cried. And after that moment of crying, they were kawa. You get it? So this is, but for men, it doesn't work like that. You know, it doesn't work like that. I've seen my wife flow. And I've not really cried with her because it's not within me, you know. But I when this lady was mentioning things like, as a man, you need to cry, you need to do what, you need to break down, you need to, you get my point. Yes, you're valid, but the system was not wired that way. You get, the system was not wired that we break out. The kind of, now getting to the question that what kind of help do men need? Men need encouragement. Men need encouragement. Men need to be understood. Men need to, men need a cushion. They don't need the whole bed. They need a cushion to just, do you get it? Do you understand me? Can we hold together? Can we move? You get, because the tears of a man are momental. But the tears of the woman,
like it is a thing that happened. I think it was one of the sessions that we had, and either you or Charles shared about, might not have been a session even, shared about a situation where a man there was a fellow who was in a needy situation. I don't remember who the fellow was, and the conversation happened, and he or you was in a similar situation, going through the same thing. And once they talked about, let's, for the sake of illustration, say, oh, man, I feel like I'm going to leave my wife. Yeah, I think I'm in that situation as well. And the amazing thing is what they took away from this meeting is strength. And go back, and without telling each other, hey, go back to your wife and work it out. The understanding that, hey, Ojara is about to break up with his wife because he's failing to understand her, and he realizes, I'm having the exact same problem. And you realize, oh, these problems are common to all of us. Let's go and face them. Like, let's find a way to understand them. And they go home. And a lot of men solve problems like that because it's mostly community. You talked about, it's not so much that we want 1 million people around us. We just want that guy to tell us, you're going through what? Oh, it's painful. Yeah, it's all right. You'll survive it. It's a simple statement, but it's going to take you through life. Just knowing that someone went through it. And we have a community. Not so much that we find joy in suffering together, but we find encouragement in knowing someone beat this thing. There is no easy solution to it, but someone beat it. I am someone. I will also beat it.
Exactly. Actually, I would like us to, as we wrap this up, I want us to now to really respond to that question and change it a little bit. Where should a man go? Where should a man go in times when they feel weak? And partly, a part of this answer is something that you just mentioned out. Though for me, I would highly recommend that in the event that a man is feeling low, things are not adding up, you know, in the event that you're encouraged to cry, you know what I have a cousin who died probably about 15 years ago. I was bogged down with stuff in my life and I was too stressed and I cried. This guy, the only statement he told me is that when you cry, it's not going to change the situation. Man, for a long while, I struggled to cry. You get my point? I don't find solutions in crying because every time I try to cry, I remember that guy's voice. He just told me in Luganda that when you cry, it doesn't change a thing. You have to figure out a way. I was still in high school, probably. So, for me, back to the question, where should a man go? For me, I believe, as a man, wherever you are, just remember one thing. You are not alone. You're not the first one to go through the things that you're going through. That's why you mentioned that when men gather and they are planning the most deadly solution on the table, like, hey man, I'm going to divorce my wife, I'm going to do that. Then you listen to the other guy, and then you go back and you're like, you actually disqualify yourself from the people who have problems after listening to others who have similar problems and they've overcome.
Yes.
Solution, community. So I believe in the moment, the advice a man needs to know is that you have to build a support community. You have to build a community of support, a community of individuals. You have to qualify some people in your life. You know, and for me, in areas where I don't have a man to go to, I don't have a person to go to, I try to find an article. I try to find a YouTube video on it. I try to find a book on it. I try to find something that can carry me through. You know, because I have listened to people's stories and I discovered that I actually don't have problems, man. You know, when you are alone,
Yes.
you think that the problem you have, that people have worse problem than yours. So me, the advice I think any man needs to hear is that as men, by the virtue of the fact that we've been framed to be providers, to be givers, to be the ones who make ends meet. So that's why we have a lot of aggressiveness in business, in what, you know, sometimes things don't add up. You know, the advice that men need is we don't need to get into this ladylike kind of thing of let's cry, let's meet as men and cry. No. Meet people, explain yourself. And for me, I believe in identifying who to go to for what. If you know that your issues are to do with money, with your finances, with your resources, with your business performance, there's got to be people who understand these things. You get, go to those individuals and talk to them. Some people will give you no single coin, but they'll give you advice that will change your life. You get. Then if it's something to do with marriage and you're young married and all of a sudden you're surrounded by fellow young guys, what the hell are you sharing your marriage problems to your guys? You're going to scare them instead. You get my point, eh? Guys are going even to postpone their weddings. They're like, hey, man, my nigga is going through this. You get. So if you know that the issue is marital, find a community. For me, the worst thing that can happen to every man, or the worst thing that men are doing right now, is to isolate themselves from communities. And man, it defeats my understanding that...
But are men just isolating themselves? Or is...
No, isolating yourself is sometimes is conscious, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not conscious. You know, one of the things that show that you've isolated yourself is that when you devote more time to your work, to your job, you get life is about that. One day I woke up to realize, one day I woke up to realization that every client I have doesn't need anything from me apart from the work that I have. You get my point. They have no business with you. That's why the moment you underperform, you're going to be fired. Even your employer.
Actually, when I left employment. Yeah, I woke up to the fact that, hey, workplace friends are like church friends. They are not friends. They are space community people like you. You know. But one of the things that I've been thinking about as you were talking is we've gone through life, and at every stage there is, of course, one of the things that we have to accept is that there are partings in life. Like, every stage of life, there's people that you're with. For example, I said I left my workplace with no friends, but that's a lie. There are people who are my friends who, it's a blessing that I was at certain workplaces because I met these people, and they're incredible. They add to my life every day. Now, there are certain people who you need to keep in your life in a certain way. Like, because there are people who, you know, for example, I talk to Moses, and every time I talk to Moses, I feel encouraged. man, recognize. And I think that's the important thing about that part of community. Recognize that Moses is encouragement in your community. If you're too dumb to recognize it, save the phone number in your phone as Moses encouragement, because you need to recognize that. And I've been recognizing that. Let me give you an example. I have a friend who I basically threw out of my life at some point. And then something happened to him, and I realized people around him are going to ask me. And yet, this was not a relationship I could run from. Like, I could throw him out of my life, but I could not run from all the people who think that we've done so much of our lives together, like nearly all of our lives together. So, okay, if I don't want him in my life, I should still know, because people will ask about him. So, I know some people are thinking, guy, no one is your responsibility, but that just means that he's your responsibility. And I fessed up to it, and because of my faith again, because of being a Christian, knowing that I have to forgive this person and move on eventually. I had a conversation with this guy one time, and he was going through something, and he was holding on to unforgiveness, and he thought, I am right. He wanted to be right, and I realized your being right is failing you from reconciling with the other person. And I told him, hey, do you remember this time when this and this and this happened? Do you remember that I cut you out of my life? Or at least you didn't see me in your life? I'm like, yes. And I told him this is what was happening, because I didn't need your energy in my life anymore. So I did the thing that everyone advises on social media, cut out the bad energy. And then I told him the only reason I'm seated here across from you is because I decided that you could not be my friend anymore. I decided that I didn't need you for anything anymore. And yet I also realized that I could not cut you out of my life, because for some reason you're knit into my life. So I named you my brother. My friend, my relationship with him changed. And I realized that from the time I told him that, I have never been introduced as his friend. This guy jumped onto this thing. Now, I'm supposed to have bashed him with this feedback that I gave him, because it was brutal. And he was looking at me like, you could see he was bleeding inside. But when what I was saying to him was heavy, from that day he calls me his brother. And man, there's something conciliatory about it, because in that moment of me telling him for the first time what he had done to me, because again, we do that a lot. There are things that I do to you, and you don't even say anything about it, and then if it gets strong enough, you just cut me out. Now, people out there don't think that men do that, but we do that. We cut you out so strongly, but some of the people we cut out of our lives should not be outside our lives. They should be in our lives, and we need to not cancel them. We need to forgive them, and then we need to do the painful thing of heal the relationship.
Exactly.
Like, you can't always cut people out of your life. Sometimes you need to heal the relationship with those people. And it's painful, but it's worth it. Because...
I identify with quite a lot of the things that you're talking about. And typically, a typical man will know that rarely a man confrontational. The moment you don't impress him, he looks at you, he tries his level best, they cut you off. And now the best thing that you did to that guy is when you came out and you actually told him. Because there are people we cut out, and they never know that you cut them out. They just see character change, you know? But it takes a lot of humility, it takes a lot of healing when 2 years later you come and tell the guy that, man, I ignored you because of this. That's why they understand. And what I learned from your response on that is space is needed for healing to take place. That's why when you get sick, you're given space, you're given a rest. So sometimes the immediate action may not be the best action. So sometimes you just need a break, but you also need to be sober enough and understanding that some of these guys are needed as brothers. Go back, amend the relationship, and move on. You know. So for me, just as we're concluding this, I feel like when it comes to the question where does a man go? Where should a man go in times of trouble, in times when they're not making enough money, when they are struggling, when things are not making sense? Where should they go? Me, I believe, figure out each specific area of your life and know where to run. It's
Yeah.
what we're talking about. It's community. Figure out, who do I go to? Who, like you mentioned, sometimes you can even save someone as maybe Moses, encouragement, Jairus, prayer, this, and then you get to know that when I need this, you know. The thing I want to encourage people is that when you grow up, it is easier to wake up to the loss. You know, when you're losing, many times you don't tell. But when you lose, you actually know that you lost.
You've lost,
But
yes.
how you lost, you just don't feel it. I believe there are people who
No,
maybe
we actually wake up to the fact that we lost
Exactly.
so much.
But in the process of losing, you don't see it. So the guys out there, what I want to remind any guy watching this or listening in is that as a man, the hustle continues up to the very end. You know, you're struggling with high school. You're struggling because a certain man called your father is struggling to get money to take you through school. Even you go to campus, you struggle because the man is struggling. Then after that, you struggle to get a job. Even now getting into work, you struggle. So you get a family, get a first kid, you struggle. Then
Struggle continues.
so the struggle continues. Now, I used to think that when my daughter starts talking, it will be kawa. Man, more complications here and here. So when they turn 18, it's another thing to worry about. When they turn 20, so as a guy, I think it's just to understand that there is no plan for the struggle to what? To stop. But at least we can have a plan of building a community. So for me, my parting shot on this is the struggle continues. With that we will be struggling, it will be there, but how we will handle. You know, so
Don't
in
do
the
it alone.
event, in the event that you are feeling low, you're feeling down, you're feeling things are not adding up, check your phone book. If you know that you lost, you know, if as you're listening to this, you know that you lost, you're realizing that you lost, the way you lost is the way you're going to win.
Yeah.
You lost bit by bit, so you can now reconnect back, bit by bit by bit by bit.
Yeah.
Some time ago, I left the country, worked out, and then came back, and I felt like people had forgotten me. It took me about 2 to 3 years to reconnect, reactivate my relationships, appear back in fellowship, in friends, and things like that.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway from this particular conversation is have people. Know who you have. Like, don't be general about it. Know who you have. If it's not weird, let them know what they mean to you, because one of the things that I know that for me I respond to very well is when I know what I mean to someone. First of all, there are people who we naturally don't like. A guy likes you, thinks you're his person, but you're not like that for them. The truth is, what's helped me be there for some of those guys is that I know what I mean to them. And I know that right now they don't have the option. So I create the time for them because I know I am that person. So maybe, and this is how I think that men should cry. I mean, cry with a response, like respond. One of the other things that I just want to highlight, 2 things as my closing. One is that when you go to collect your wife to be from their home, I don't know any culture in Uganda where the man speaks. You're the one who went for the wife. They speak for you. It's one of the most intimidating things that a man ever does. Like, seriously. And a lot of those times, when you ask the first girl ever, if you're a wise guy, or if there are a bunch of people around you, you'll probably ask a second person to speak for you. it happens a lot more than people realize that guys ask someone to speak for them. But yeah, one of the things that you can do to help guys is remind them that there is someone who speaks for them. And lastly, I'd like to say that yes, men have, I don't care that people don't like it, men have a hero syndrome. It's okay. Well, a lot of women also have a damsel in distress syndrome, and that's okay. The argument about whether or not those things are true doesn't matter. What matters is that it manifests in our day-to-day lives. But for me, the warning to men is, man, nearly all heroes are dead bodies. It's unfortunate. So whatever you think about dealing with things, or however you want to deal with them, don't let them kill you. You know, and the only way to not die is get help.
My punchline for the day from you is quit being heroes. Nearly all heroes are dead bodies. Well, anyway, it's been a very good conversation on this edition of Man Heart. If you're watching this and you're watching it on YouTube or whichever platform, you can feel free to share your opinion right in the comment section, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. But otherwise, for now, I would want us to say thank you so much for watching in. We look forward to joining you.
Yeah.
We look forward to sharing with you more info. We look forward to catching up with you on the next edition. Thank you.